What's up, bitches? It's your boy. We're doing this shit again, huh? Fuck me.
Welcome back to Stone History. Today we're going
Yeah.
to continue where we left off with the topic of,
Of Maya Island, man. 2 weeks, 2 week bender. Let's fucking go. Okay, so, we left off, like, with what, Prohibition last time?
yes.
Yeah,
If
okay,
I remember
so,
correctly, the last story you told was of the addresses being switched to void search words.
yeah, my dad's family's a bunch of fucking crackheads like that. My dad especially, man, the stories he could tell. God, now that's a guy we need to get on the fucking podcast one of these days. Not that I'd ever bring him on here because I don't trust him to not drop a absolute slur or slew of racial slurs. Like, no. This man says the N-word with the hard R and thinks it's okay.
Yeah, in the sake of not having my channel completely fucking, you know.
Hey, I said it with the soft day last time and we're still online, so it's okay. But moving on, yeah, so Prohibition, fucking the mob and shit. A couple things I should have brought up last time about the mansions, right? And these are actually kind of fun, little interesting tidbits, like what I left us off with last time. Most of the mansions. Hold on, my dad's calling me. Speak of the devil.
Oh, that's fucking funny.
Am I right?
Meanwhile, folks, enjoy me killing zombies.
Sorry about that. But yeah, so, like, let's say for the sake of easy math that there was 300 mansions and manors built during the Gilded Age, right? By the time the Great Depression and, the stock market crash and all that jazz, struck the U.S., most of these families were already on their last legs. A lot of these families had already blown much of the money that they had gained at the end of the 19th century. When most of their houses were built. So, it was just like it was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? And unfortunately, out of those, say, 300 mansions and manors and such, less than 50 of them still stand. Most of them have been turned into private homes, albeit heavily modified to fit, newer tastes and such. But most of them have just been, bought up. Like, those that survived were either turned into private homes, the museums that you can tour now, such as the ones I talked about last time.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find to be particularly interesting, college dormitories. The local college, Salvia Regina, they were among the patrons and stuff that what's the word? Rubbed elbows with a lot of the families. So when all the houses went on the market, they were like, "Ooh, I'm gonna take this one and that one and this one and that one and that one and this," and just bought up like half the properties. And they ended up converting them into community halls and dormitories and every manner of administration buildings and this and that. Like, they built the entire campus out of all these old mansions essentially, and the campus is spread halfway across across half the fucking town.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, so it's a super expensive school to go to, just like baseline or whatever. But the benefits of going is not only having one of the best educations in the state, but also your dormitory is a 200-year-old mansion. I mean, how cool is that?
Mm-hmm. That is actually really fucking cool.
And a couple of the mansions that still stand that I didn't get to last time. Well, one of them was, so this guy, right, he married a girl from Scotland, right? and he was like some kind of, you know, banker or something. He had a lot of money. And he married this girl from Scotland, and after the wedding, like right after on their honeymoon, he found out that she was a descendant of the, you know, now and since then abolished Scottish monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a wedding gift, he bought a Scottish castle, had the entire thing dismantled brick by brick, and then transported across the Atlantic and reassembled on the coastline here as a wedding gift.
Nah, that's a hell of a wedding gift. Also, I just chopped that dude clean in fucking half.
Hell yeah, dude. So yeah, it's one of like several. It's the only Scottish castle that I know of, but there's several houses that are built in the same style. You know, usually it's like a Gothic or Tudor or Elizabethan or Edwardian revival type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Though, however, that's not to say that most of the mansions, especially the ones that aren't standing anymore, a lot of the contents inside as well as the building materials were purchased or taken from existing or pre-existing mansions, manors, and palaces across Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, for example, there's one mansion called Belcourt Castle, which is one of the most haunted mansions in Newport.
Yeah, I think I've actually heard of that before.
Yeah, it's very famous. There's a suit of armor, funnily enough, inside the mansion that supposedly will follow you around at night and will scream, because the origin story is that the guy that owned it, you know, because obviously back then the person who wore it owned it because you had to pay for your own arms and armor.
Mm-hmm.
The king wasn't going to put out for, you know, 10,000 sets of, you know, fully stacked armor. There's no way in hell he'd bankrupt the entire kingdom doing that. On every campaign? Are you kidding me? No way. So, back to the story. The story of the suit of armor is that the original owner was killed in battle when an arrow went through the eye slits of his visor of his helmet.
So it is basically like that one fucking meme that's been circulating of like, you know what I'm talking about, right?
I think I know the Terry thing. Yeah. It's exactly like that. So he was, you know, in battle, obviously, probably on his horse with his visor drawn down, you know, ready to go into battle, and then the archers, you know, pulled back, slew, you know, thing of arrows, and one just happened to go straight through the fucking eye slits.
So just absolutely unlucky.
Just took his ass right out of the fucking game right then and there. And ever since then, it's said that his suit of armor, you know, on certain days and certain nights and certain, you know, such and such, can be heard not only bellowing out like this blood-curdling, primal, like, scream from within the suit of armor. That can be heard throughout the house, essentially. But also, I have a friend, I won't name him just because I don't want, you know, I don't want him, I don't know how he feels about me sharing this story, you know, for better or for worse. I could honestly give a fuck, but you know what I'm saying. He's not anyone, but I don't want to piss him off. But anyway, he was staying there with his dad one time, and his dad used to be a very prominent lawyer. I don't know if he still is a lawyer, but his dad, last time I, you know, saw him, his dad was a very prominent state lawyer. So they always, you know, stayed at, you know, fancy hotels and shit whenever his dad went on business. And one time they were staying at Belcourt Castle, and my friend got up to use the bathroom, right? And he had to go down a few hallways and, you know, down some stairs and this and that. And he told me that every time he rounded a corner on one of the hallways, he'd always, like, look back because he felt like something was watching him. And every time he turned around, the suit of armor was standing at the end of the hallway looking at him.
Okay, that is...
From down the hallway.
That would, like, legitimately... I'd be fucking out of there so fast.
But see, here's the thing, though, is it's supposed to be set up in one of the main, you know, dining area, you know, the grand dining hall or whatever, it's supposed to be, that's its permanent fixture, is in there. You know, so what's it doing in the hallways way far away from where it's standing?
Screaming.
Well, I don't know if it was screaming when it was following him, but it is known to scream, and according to my friend, known to, well, in this case, follow people around at night. And that's just one of like dozens of different stories like that. Not necessarily with suits of armor, but just like
weird shit happening in that place.
Or not just that place, but just across Newport, but like specific, like people, like ones that like you mention it, and you know, one or more people will be like, "Oh yeah, I've done, you know, I've had that happen to me at that place with that specific thing." You know,
also,
it's a.
Honestly, not to cut you off, but does that not kind of sound like something straight out of like fucking Scooby-Doo?
Bro, my whole fucking island is Scooby-Doo. Hello, I live in Crystal Cove, for God's sake. Bro, I'm surprised the crab creature hasn't popped out of the sand and kidnapped 100 tourists by now.
Whoa. How
Not
the
that I
fuck
would
did
stop
miss that?
them. Bro, for real. But no, there was another one. And this one happened to my uncle, right? Look, no, he's since passed away. He passed away when he was 18. God rest his soul. But when he was like 10 or 11, right? There's this. And the tree is still there, and okay, so he was walking home, right, and it was about maybe a quarter mile from his house where this happened. It is this like bend, and it comes around this property, and you can overlook the ocean. It's, you know, it's bend around the way or whatever, and right on the corner of the bend, there's this big oak tree, right, and he was walking by the tree one day, and this was, he died in 73, so this had to have been like 1965, so you know there was no drones, there was no computer, there was nothing, you know, so there was no, you know, the only way that something, what I'm about to tell you, the only way that something could have been done like this is with like some kind of movies, you know, level special effects type of shit.
Like something that the average person would not just have back then.
You could, but it would be extremely difficult to pull off.
Keyword there being average person.
Well, yes, but I'm saying, like, let me tell the story and then we'll, you know...
discuss the semantics of it.
Exactly, thank you. So my uncle was walking by, and he, you know, paused and, you know, just absentmindedly looked up at the tree, right, as he's walking by, and it up in the, you know, the tree on the branch, right, he can see what looks to be a boy about his age, maybe a little bit younger, sitting on the branch. But the thing is, the boy is completely see-through, right? What gets worse. So he's already spooked enough, so he kind of like picks up the pace and tries to, like, you know, get out of there. And then the fucking kid leaps off the branch and swoops down and dive bombs my uncle.
I would have, in that position, I would be shitting myself.
And my uncle, he ran the entire almost half mile back to the house in one go. Just booked it the whole fucking way. 10, dude. And he drew a picture of it too. And my dad said it was one of the creepiest things he's ever seen. Granted, this was 50, 60 years ago, so we don't have the picture anymore, obviously. I wish I did, because goddamn it. And he's not the only person in my family to have seen a ghost. My mom, in one of the houses that she grew up in, with, you know, all 7 of her siblings, there was apparently this Amish ghost. It was the ghost of an Amish dude that would like wander around the house at night. And my mom saw it one night, and for years she thought she was the only one until she brought it up with her brothers, you know, decades later, and they're all like, yeah, we saw him too. I thought, you know, we all thought we were the only ones. So, but, you know, and then there is, remember me mentioning the pirates that got hanged?
Yes.
The island, or the It wasn't on Bowen's Wharf, which I showed you pictures of before. It was on this place called Goat Island, which, despite the name, has never had goats, to my knowledge. It's just this little, tiny little, like, maybe 100 square yards big, like the size of a parking lot, because that's basically all there is. There's a parking lot and some docking, and a teeny tiny little, like, cafe-sized restaurant, right? For all the little yachty people, but it's like obnoxiously expensive. It's like $100 a meal.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, that's nothing around here. There's the one place I worked at, I won't say the name, but
because they will sue
in,
you to shit.
well, they won't sue me to shit, but I don't want to, tread on any toes. Not that I really give a fuck about them anyway. But I mentioned them in one of my one of the work episodes. But they had one of the things on their menu was it's like a 35-ounce, 55-day old dry aged, so dry aged for 55 days, a 35-ounce steak, a ribeye for $165.
That is an expensive ass steak.
Before taxes.
Jesus.
So, like, on the menu that they give you, it's already listed for $165 by itself. And one time, someone sent theirs back, so we just cut it up and put it on a big plate of fries with hot sauce and mayonnaise, and oh my god, I wouldn't pay $165, I might pay $100. I actually might pay $100 for that. It was that good. I'm telling you, I've never had a steak that ever came close.
Dude, I think the most expensive steak I've ever had was like $13.
No, that's understandable. No, that is completely understandable. That is, market price. If you pay more than that, you're just paying for the luxury of episode. I can tell you that flat out. And that's not even just me being like, oh, I love this shit for 10 years. No, I'm just being like, look, I can get a steak at the market for fucking, $10, $15, whatever. And you're trying to tell me you want to charge me over twice that for the same steak with some fucking greens and potatoes? You can kiss my ass.
You see, shit like that is why I don't really go to restaurants.
The same, dude.
It's like, I can cook this stuff myself for like a quarter of the price.
Bro, I always tell people, it's like, when you go to a restaurant, you're not paying for the food, you're paying for the luxury of having to not do it yourself, or the cleanup that comes with it. The food is peanuts on the dollar. You're paying for the fact that everyone in that restaurant themselves has to be paid in order for you to have that. So you're not paying for the food. What you're doing is you're paying the restaurant's payroll for them.
God damn it.
Like, in essence, that is. Obviously not,
But talking about this has made me fucking start thinking about Food Wars, and now I am extremely hungry, even though I just ate.
Food Wars, the fucking anime?
Yes.
Bro, you're gonna have to bring me on for an anime podcast, too, because I have a lot of hot button opinions about anime.
Well, here's the thing, I don't watch a lot of anime, so...
Neither do I, that's the beauty of it.
It's like, I can fucking count on one hand the amount of anime I've watched, that being fucking Food Wars, Black Lagoon, Spice and Wolf, and High School DxD. That's about it.
See, I've watched plenty of anime, but I almost never finished them, and even at that, I don't remember half of what I watched. But before we get too off topic, let's get back to what we were talking about before.
Yes.
So, the pirates, right, Goat Island, there's an apartment complex there. And the apartment complex happens to be built on the exact spot where the pirates are buried.
Because that's a good idea.
See, you have to remember, people around here have just gotten so used to the existence of ghosts, they're just like, burial grounds be damned.
It's like, what's it gonna take? A fucking demon?
Bro, my brother's house is built on a Native American burial ground. As I'm about to tell you, my old boss, her apartment is built on a pirate execution burial ground. I mean... and I never even mentioned the pirate that's buried in the burial ground next to the church in town, where I also saw a ghost.
Oh, fucking course.
who pointed out the fact that there was a pirate buried there. Which I'll get to in a second.
You see, I am so fucking glad that I met you, because you're just... Don't take this the wrong way, but you are a fucking content goldmine for my channel.
Hey, I'm taken, man. I'm happy to do this shit. Like I told you before, no one's ever asked me to fucking share my stories. Everyone always tells me that, yeah, that's nice. After, after like maybe 2 minutes of me talking, they're like, okay, can you shut up now so we can, move on? I'm like, okay, whatever, So, but anyway, granted, that's mostly my sister doing shit like that. But again, moving on. The pirates, right? So, my old boss, we'll call her Jasmine. So Jasmine was in her kitchen at like 11:30 at night ish. Oh, that reminds me of another fucking story.
Alright, well, continue with this one first, and then we'll get to the one you just remembered. Otherwise, it's like, this video is just a series of tangents.
This is literally my... See, this is what it's like. This is what it's like living with ADHD, people.
The fact that we both have it, too, doesn't help.
No. So... She was in their kitchen making tea or cooking or some bullshit at like 11:30 at night, and she's like staring out the window at the ocean, and she just hears like from behind her, because she's home alone, mind you, she lives by herself too. She just hears in her ear, just like loud as fuck, "Get out!" Oh
my god, I would be fucking... I would take its advice and fucking leave right then and there.
Bro, so that was, she like jumped out of her shit after that. And I'll get to the pirate graveyard one in a second, but it reminded me of another story. Now, this is completely unrelated to my island, but it is creepily identical to the one I just told. It's actually a story my ex-boyfriend told me. Back when we were dating. He was making tea in his kitchen looking out the window at like super late at night, and fucking okay, so he may have seen the Grim Reaper.
Okay, that's terrifying.
Like, okay, so
no offense,
like,
but knowing you and the company you keep, I have to ask of the state of his sobriety at the time.
Stone cold. He's never at that point. He had not started drinking, and he does not smoke.
Right.
But so he looks out the window and he sees this really tall, dark figure standing at the back end of his backyard, right in his yard, like on his property, all the way against the fence. So like a good 15 or 20 feet, well, no, 15 or 20 yard, ish, like max. Maybe not even, probably closer to like 5 to 10 yards max, right? Like you could like throw a rock and hit the dude square in the forehead, no problem.
So fucking close, basically.
Yeah, like almost within talking distance. But anyway, so he sees this fucking thing standing in his backyard, and it's wearing a long, dark cloak, right? And it points right at him.
Dude.
Like, it was, and this was in Northern Ireland, right? And the thing about Northern Ireland, and I'm not going to get too political, but the part of Northern Ireland that he lives in, 30-year civil war, just between 1969 and 1998, 2,500 people were killed in a 30-year civil war that almost reached what the UN considers to be like a actual war.
Wow.
So that alone, and that was ended in 1990. Well, ended quote unquote in 98. So you can imagine how dark the energy in that area. And that's just from that, never mind the other 800 years of bullshit that I was going through with the English. You know. So whatever that fucking thing was, there's 3 possibilities based on all of that, plus my knowledge of Celtic and Irish mythology. So it was either, obviously, a Reaper, a Dullahan, a Banshee,
or a wraith of some sort.
It was probably if it wasn't some sort of hallucination, it was likely, you know, some kind of, I don't know, like what were those things from fucking Harry Potter, the Death Eaters or something?
Dementors?
Yeah, the Dementors. Think of that, but like standing in the back of your, you know, back garden.
Just thinking about that is sending a chill down my spine.
Like, no, see, think about it. Like, think, it's literally just you and your mom and your brother, right? And they're both dead asleep. You're the only one awake. It's pitch fucking blackout, like at night, like almost midnight. You go upstairs to make a cup of coffee. You look down at your garden, and there's this Dementor standing in the middle of your backyard.
I think, honestly, at that point, I'd be on the floor in the fetal position crying.
Oh, and then he also had a fucking, like this demon thing that lived in his bedroom, too. That would, like, crawl across the floor on all fours and, like, to hide in the corners, in the shadows. And would, like, occasionally be ballsy enough to try and climb on his bed.
Yeah, because I didn't want to sleep tonight anyway.
Oh, and then I already, during the first video, I already told you about Maurice.
But no, it's like, you're telling me all this, it is literally the only light in my room right now is coming from, like, my fucking monitor.
Okay, so we'll segue right into the fucking, the time I saw the ghost in the graveyard.
Actually, then, hold on, because I want to fucking very quickly tell a story of something that happened to me, like, 3 fucking nights ago that I am now absolutely 100% convinced that my apartment is fucking haunted.
Okay, and I can offer advice on how to fix that if need be.
Possibly, but... So, it was like about 1 in the morning, about 4 nights ago, right?
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there at my computer watching... Actually, I was talking with a few friends, then my fucking power goes out. So, I go fucking out to, like, check the fuse box and shit. And then, from my kitchen, I hear what sounds like 2 fucking pots being banged together about 10, 20 times.
Oh,
and then the fucking power came back on. And again, this was like 1 in the morning, like, I was the only one in the apartment awake.
And your roommate, or whoever you live with, doesn't,
that would be my...
sleepwalking?
No, because my mother came out, like, right after the power came back on. Like, she came out of her room like, what the fuck was that?
Oh, shit. Yeah, you have a poltergeist.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking, it's like...
Yeah, no, you have I have like 5 that live in my house.
And even just like fucking 3 hours ago today, I was just sitting right where I'm sitting now, listening to fucking music, and my chair got yanked back so goddamn hard I almost fell backwards.
Try talking to it. It probably wants attention. It probably feel, like if it's a spirit that simply just feels lonely or wants attention, like if it doesn't mean anything malicious, it's just trying to get you guys' attention, simply talking to it and asking what it wants and shit can, you know, solve so many things if it's really bothering you that much.
Well, it's not really bothering me, it's just kind of creepy, but yeah, I'll take your advice, but what worries me is this is not the first thing like this I've dealt with. The place that I lived before here had something that was, by the end, straight up aggressive.
Yikes.
Like, you've seen me back when I used to have, like, really fucking long hair, right?
Yeah.
I remember there was one time I was just sitting on my bed, and it literally yanked me to my feet by my hair.
Damn. Yeah, see that? That's
so what worries me is that whatever entity that was has found me here.
It's entirely possible, especially if it's demonic, because demonic entities...
Yeah.
And when I say a demonic entity, I don't mean a demon. There's a very stark difference between a demonic entity and a straight-up demon. A straight-up demon, you need, like, a priest for. A demonic entity is usually, in my opinion, more of like a corrupt soul. One that's usually influenced or trapped by an actual demon. think of it like a mobster, kind of controlling a. You know how, like, in the mob they have, like,
Yeah.
made
So
people,
basically,
and
to
then they
put it
have,
simply, it's a spirit being basically controlled or influenced by something much, much worse.
assuming that it isn't the actual thing that is much, much worse.
Mm-hmm.
Because innocent souls can get trapped in an area with high demonic energy, and them themselves get corrupted and turned into, pseudo demons. Because in my personal belief, there are people whose souls either are tainted in life and become demons in the afterlife, or, you know, pass on and get trapped and their soul gets corrupted that way and they become demonic. Both of which are different than an actual demon, which is born demonic and dies demonic.
Mm-hmm.
Like Hitler, for example.
Watch the comments are now just going to be nothing but people telling us we're fucking nuts.
Hey, they can tell me that's all they want. I have a fucking literal book of spells on my altar. I have an altar, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they can tell me I'm crazy all I want.
And it's like, I believe in this shit wholeheartedly, too. Like, I'm not particularly religious, but,
Bro,
I believe in... There's gotta be something beyond, life as we know it.
We will have to do a whole fucking episode on that whole shit, because we're getting very off topic.
Anyway, so you were talking about Pirate Ghost, I do believe?
Yes. Well, actually, it's not a pirate ghost. It's a separate ghost that pointed out the grave of a pirate. So I was in high school at the time. It was junior year, so I was like...
So, for anyone questioning his state of sobriety, this was back when you were basically straight edge.
I was as straight edge as they come. I might have been a little... I drank a little at work, but I wasn't anywhere... When I was in school, I was as sober as a nun. So... And there was... and it wasn't just me. So I was in journalism class. Excuse my slurred speech. I've been drinking all day. As I told Crazy here, I already downed half a bottle of vodka today, and it's only 7 o'clock. I started drinking at 11.
At least you're able to actually have a fucking coherent conversation.
And I've been smoking, but that's to be expected. Anyway.
We call this Stone History for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. So, it was journalism class. We were on a field trip, so there was like 13, 14, 15 of us. Actually, no, there was like 13 students and like 2 adults. So we were all at the local graveyard. And the difference between a cemetery and a graveyard, for anyone curious, is a graveyard is adjacent or built in conjunction to a church. So it'll be like a series of graves that are like on the same footprint as the church itself. So they'll be like pressed up right against each other or on the same general property. And then a cemetery is a standalone burial ground. So we were in the graveyard, so it was next to a church, and the church itself and the graveyard and that whole thing, the whole establishment is probably close to 400 years old because it dates back to the mid to late 1600s. And so we were doing grave rubbings, which I'm sure most of you already know what that is, but on the off chance you don't, it's basically where you take a piece of paper and a crayon or some charcoal, and then you put the paper up against the grave and you just rub it with the charcoal so it like embellishes, whatever.
It basically gives you a printing of what is on the gravestone.
Yeah, because a lot of these gravestones are super hard to read because they're facing 400 years of coastal weather, so just hurricanes, rainstorms, snowstorms, etc. All that water is going to erode all the fine detail. So this is one of the few ways you can get an accurate reading of what these graves say. And so we found out a lot about, some of the people that lived there. And, for example, one of the guys the grave that I was assigned, dude died in a fucking powder magazine explosion.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, like he was like a fucking worker at like a local gunpowder manufacturing place, and the whole place went kaboom, and he went with it. He was like 27 or something. Like, God, I can't imagine
That
just
is
being
not
blown
a
into
good way
like
to go.
literally
I mean,
blown into 1,000 different
it'd be
directions.
quick, but fuck, like a violent death is never a good thing.
No, and it was that kind of lifestyle built my town essentially and my island. So you can imagine, like, even if you didn't die violently, you likely lived a very violent.
Like, you've seen some shit.
Oh yeah, dude, the fucking Bowen's Wharf, the pictures that I sent you yesterday thinking they were the pirate execution area, it wasn't an execution area, but it was nicknamed Blood Alley because of all the stabbings and muggings and straight up like brutal assaults and almost more or less murders that happen there on a daily basis for like good 60, 70 years. Because back when the Navy used to control Newport, that was the sailors' turf, and if they caught you, on their turf, because it was basically like a gang attack, with, the way the Navy operated during World War II. And, both World Wars, Korea and Vietnam, up to I should say, because that's in the midst of that. That's when they pulled out and took our economy with them, which I'll get to, later. But like Bowen's Wharf, it was called Blood Alley because, so the sailors, anytime they docked in port, which was pretty much all the time, they'd, unload off the ships and they'd go down to the local laundromats, turn in their uniforms, change into their civilian clothes, and they would just get absolutely wrecked down at all the fucking bars. So like think like the Salty Spittoon crossed with the tugboat bar from the SpongeBob movie.
Yep.
And then just take a big scoop of that out of the jar and just smear it all across the fucking dockways all of downtown. And that was the Navy's turf. And if they caught you down there,
You were in for a bad time.
you were in for a horrifying time. So the way they did it, right, and it operated almost like the mob more than just a straight up gang turf war thing, because there was only the one gang, the sailors, obviously had each other's backs. So there's several ways to navigate that area. If you either lived down there, right, so they didn't bother you. They knew you. They didn't care, because it's like you live down there, so they don't give a. So you don't fuck with them, they're not gonna fuck with you. So you either live down there, you work down there in the restaurants, on the piers, on the boats, in the bars, etc. Because this was before a lot of stores and shit existed outside of like candy shops and pharmacies and basic things. There was no knick-knack shops, there was no candle stores, there was no there's none of that. It was all private businesses, bars, and other shit. Or private homes, I should say. But like, so you either lived down there, worked down there, or you were in the Navy. If you didn't fall into one of the categories, one of many things could happen to you. But most often, they would, basically drag you outside, or if they caught you inside one of the bars, they'd throw you outside and they'd beat the piss out of you if you were lucky, and then they just throw you off into the street and be like, get lost, right? And that was if you were lucky.
And I'm guessing if you were unlucky, they'd just straight up kill you.
No, because then they could be court-martialed.
True.
Because it's still murder. But most times you weren't, and most times you get usually like robbed. They'd beat you up. They'd probably knock out a couple of teeth, black eye, broken nose, that sort of thing. And then they'd steal all your any money you had on and stuff. Because you have to remember, these are guys that just come from the South Pacific and other shit. Hold on. Yeah, I'm coming. Yeah, right.
Roommate calling you?
I gotta get up.
Well, he's busy for the moment, so again, folks, just enjoy me killing zombies. Okay, then they don't exist anymore.
Sorry about that again.
No
My
worries.
food just arrived. So yeah. Most times they would, beat the absolute piss out of you, like the absolute fucking dog shit out of you. Like what in today's terms would be considered hospitalization.
Mm-hmm. So basically, expect to walk away with a few broken bones.
Yeah, more or less, a couple lacerations. Because again, you have to remember these are guys that just got off the shit most times. Been at sea for at least 2 to 3 months, depending on where they were coming from. Usually coming from active combat, or fresh out of near basic, active combat. Because a lot of the times it was during, both world wars in Korea. And so, there are a few times people did get murdered down there. People got murdered down in Newport all the fucking time. Like, that place was basically Detroit, in a lot of ways. Like, that shit was not to be fucked around with. But typically people kind of kept it just under murder, like beaten to the point of where you feel like you want to die, but you're not going to have them doing so. And so, back to the pirate grave real quick, because I don't know how the fuck we got on a blood alley. But like, so we're at doing the grave rubbings, and fucking we hear this like voice come from behind the wrought iron fence that wrapped around the graveyard. Let me pull up a picture if I can find it of the fucking thing, because it's like the way that area was positioned, right? There is zero reason that what happened could have happened, because what happened next, all of us turned around and we see this like lady, this old ass lady, probably like in her late 80s, early 90s, like super decrepit looking. That's what I mean. But she's like, there's a pirate buried here, and like this weird like like I'm thinking like Disney, like the witch from the witch from like Snow White, the one that gives her the apple, kind of like that same vibe, just like there's a pirate buried here,
like almost a bit like, Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah, just like, who the fuck are you and why are you telling us this? And we're like, oh, on God, and she's like, yeah, and she points it out to us, and we go over, we check it, and this was in the span of like 30 seconds, right? And we go over and check it, we're like, oh, cool, it is, and we turn around to thank her,
and she's just gone.
She's just gone.
Yeah, let me know when you send that picture through. I'll tab it on the game, and
if I can find it. But like, we're like, what the fuck just happened? Because this is the way the street corners lined up is you can see for like at least an eighth to a quarter of a mile in almost every direction that the street leads down.
So like you, by all rights, should have been able to see her both coming and leaving.
Even if it was someone like me, right, in like the fullest peak of physical health in terms of being able to move quickly, you're
not getting out of sight that fast.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yes. Anyway, sorry.
Roommates giving you shit?
No, my father. I have a very questionable relationship with my father. But I won't get into that. fucking what was I saying? Yeah, so even someone like me in like full physical prowess, you'd be able to see me. Like even if I managed to book it like 0 to 50, you know, like this full sprint, like from a dead stop, right? Like Usain Bolt,
Mm-hmm.
you'd still be able to see the person like way the fuck down the street. Even if they managed to get that far, you'd still be able to see them. This bitch was nowhere.
So she just like disappeared, basically.
Oh, this bitch pulled a fucking Houdini act on our ass. It's just gone.
Man, your whole fucking town really is like fucking Scooby-Doo.
Bro, like legit. Hold on, I have the church on Google. I'm just trying to find a picture of the graveyard from the right angle. But moving on to the next topic while I look for this. Now this is gonna consume my thoughts because all I can think about is bitch pulling a fucking Houdini act on my ass. Here's one angle, and this is kind of like, if you look in voice chat, I'll be able to point out, let me know when you're looking at it, and I'll point out to what happened, because that's the corner she was standing at, you know, so you'll be able to, like, get a feel for it.
Right.
Just let me know when you're,
Yeah, I've got it up on my screen right now.
Okay, so, see where the telephone pole is?
Mm-hmm.
Right at the base of it, right on that corner, that's where she was standing, like, all the way in the corner.
Right.
And the street, see how it goes like all the way down the block in both of those directions? It goes all the way down the block just like that in, you know, all 4 directions.
Yeah, so I'm assuming this is a painting of the area?
Yeah.
But yeah, from what I'm seeing there's no way in hell someone could get out of sight that fast.
From 13 people, 15 people, you know.
So no one else saw her?
No, we all saw her, but no one else saw where she went.
Okay, yeah, so that's like, she literally just vanished.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, we had kids from the hood that were just like, nah, fuck this. Like, here, is this a good angle? Yeah, kinda. It definitely offers a better idea of what you're looking at, I suppose. This is from, like, if you're looking at the painting, on the right side going down towards, because it's on a hill, so it's going down, like, if you're going away from the lamppost in the first picture, you know, towards, like, if you have your mouse on the thing and drag it towards the right, that's going downhill, right?
Yep.
The second picture is from the vantage point at the bottom of the hill, like coming, like facing up the hill. So you're facing towards where she would have been standing, all the way in the back, right? And you know that's the range of view we're talking, like, you know, several hundred yards.
So yeah, realistically, with that many people there, someone should have been able to see like her leave.
At least should have seen where she went. You know, never mind, you know, how she left or whatever. But she just literally, like, all of us, I don't even know if all of us actually turned around. We just, like, 1 second she is there, the next thing we know, she's just gone. Just poof, like that. And that was 2013, so unless 15 people hallucinated the same thing at the exact same time,
Which, fucking doubtful.
I mean, even at that, it's like mass hysteria aside, there was nothing to be hysterical about. We saw a lady walk up to a fence and point out a grave, and the next thing we know, she's gone. Like, that's not us freaking out, that's literally us seeing a person disappear. But what's interesting about pirate graves is that because it's a Catholic cemetery, the only way a pirate can be buried in a Catholic cemetery at the time was for them, you know, upon either their execution or their deathbed or what have you, was to not only denounce their sins and their, ways of piracy and all that jazz, but also to convert fully and be baptized into the Christian church or the Catholic church. Like, so you have to be, you had to basically confess and, renounce all of your sins that you committed while you were a pirate, right? And then,
so you basically had to seek atonement and redemption.
You had to seek atonement with the church, but the whole denouncing your ways as a pirate allowed you to not be a convict in the eyes of the law anymore, and allow you to integrate into the the parish and be baptized and all that jazz, which then allowed you to be buried in consecrated ground. Otherwise, your ass would just be dumped out at sea, or left in a gibbet hanging up on the pier for the birds to pick at. Aren't people just great to each other?
Yep.
Like,
the compassion of humanity, folks.
Yeah, bro.
Especially back then.
Bro, you don't even know the fuck. I could do a whole one of these just on execution methods.
I think that would probably get taken down.
Oh, hell yeah.
As much as I would absolutely love to do that video, I don't want to get my channel removed.
I mean, I've seen plenty of YouTube videos on it anyway, so it's not like the YouTube algorithm really gives a shit, but
True.
I see your point. Anyway, moving on. So, Blood Alley was a thing, and then I never even got to the whole point of the mansions that I wanted to bring the whole thing started, was that one of the mansions, and this is one of my favorite stories to tell people because it really, like, if the pictures of the mansions that I showed you before don't, like, highlight and exemplify the just disgusting levels of opulence these people lived. There's this one story, and it takes place at a mansion that unfortunately was I think it was damaged, severely damaged in a hurricane. And I'll get to a specific hurricane after this story, I promise. And if I don't, stop me and remind me.
Right.
Because it's a huge cornerstone of my island's history back in the early 20th century. In fact, one that I have personal family ties to. Oh God. Anyway, so this one house, right? It was damaged in a hurricane and then eventually torn down with all the others. So it no longer stands. But when it was in use, anytime the family or the owners would throw a party, right? And this was fairly frequently, I would say at least once every other week, probably once every week at least minimum, depending, because what they would do, right, is they had this giant sandbox in the backyard. And when I say giant, I mean think like an in-ground swimming pool, but like an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
Holy shit.
Like, we're talking like a whole, like a big fucking sandbox. And this wasn't just any ordinary sandbox, right? They had a house literally on a freaking island. So we have, I want to say, at least a dozen or so beachheads minimum, and that's a very iffy minimum. It's probably much higher, but so there's sand everywhere, and that's just on my island. Never mind all the other islands everywhere, or just even on this continent, because they were like North American sand is too bullshit. South American sand is Caribbean sand is I want sand from the Egyptian desert.
Of course.
So they had several metric tons of sand imported straight from the Egyptian desert and dumped into their backyard. Into this giant fucking sand pit. Which, if that wasn't, extra enough, Take a guess, before I just completely blow the lid off this bitch. Take a guess as to what they did with the sandbox when the guests arrived, or like in preparation for the guests arriving at every party.
I honestly don't think I can guess anything even close to what it actually is, so just tell me.
No, take a guess. I want to see what you think.
I honestly, as I said, I literally can't fucking guess. Like,
Okay, Mr. Killjoy.
I'm sorry, my brain's drawing a blank, because it's... I guarantee you whatever I'm going to say is nothing compared to what it actually is.
And that was what I was hoping for. I wanted to see what you thought was, like, top tier, because I can guarantee you it's not this. So, they would, have you ever, like, been on a scavenger hunt before?
Yeah.
Have you ever been on a scavenger hunt where you have to dig things up? Kind of like geocaching, but it's like in a concentrated area.
Personally, no, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so they basically did that with the sandbox, right? And the guests could keep whatever they found in the sandbox. So they'd fill the sandbox with all this stuff, and then the guests could go in and dig it up. But here's the kicker, right? The stuff that they buried consisted of, but isn't limited to, diamonds, emeralds, rubies, sapphires, gold, silver, silver flatware, and plates and other crap, and pearls, and literally anything else of trinkety kind of jewelry value. And they just go in, they'd have their servants just take like a big crate full of crap, all these like precious metals and jewels and shit, and be like, go bury this in the sandbox because the guests are going to be here in an hour and they're going to want to dig it out of the sand. Well, they're allowed to do. That's the point of it. So yeah.
That is... honestly... I don't even have words to, like, accurately sum up, like, my thoughts on that. It's just fucking hilariously ridiculous.
What's even more hilariously ridiculous is there is this other mansion, and a lot of people nowadays, I think, have forgotten the story of it, so anytime I bring it up, they're very quick to denounce it. But this is what I was told when I was a child, and this was a long, long time ago, I say. But I mean, this was 20 years ago, the last time I heard the story as a news story. But there's this one mansion, Chateau Sumer. It's a French villa that was obviously taken from France and rebuilt here, dismantled, packaged, shipped over, and rebuilt, just like the Scottish castle I mentioned. And the property has a giant stone wall, as do most of the mansions. Typical. Some of these stone walls, mind you, are like castle walls. They're like 15, 20 feet tall with like 3 feet thick, solid bricks, like solid boulder-sized bricks of limestone, and carved sandstone. So this was one of the many walls like that, and on one particular wing of the wall, there's a circular, like an almost near perfect circular gate. Right, so it's like an arch that goes over the top and then rings around the bottom to form a perfect circle in the middle of this otherwise square wall. And it has wrought iron gating through the middle of it, and then the most peculiar thing about it is that it has this metal rebar, metal bar really, that just curves around the top, right? With like a ladder of sorts, kind of looking thing. And then at the very top of the arch, attached to this metal bar, is a chair. It's like two metal plates welded together to form a chair. And according to local legend, and this was the story that I was told, when the mansion was in use, right, the family had an exotic pet orangutan. Well, some people say it was orangutan, some people say it was a chimp.
Just from hearing that, I figured this story cannot end well.
Well, depends on how you want to look at it, but sure. So they had a pet chimp monkey thing, and they trained it to use a rifle. They trained it to use a rifle and sit in the chair and watch out for intruders. And if it was given the order to, like if an intruder was spotted and, it was given confirmation to take action, it was trained to use the gun it was given to shoot the intruder dead. Now, this is just a local legend, and obviously I haven't personally been able to find any solid evidence of this, but knowing what I know about all the other houses, I don't care what anyone says, I will. You're telling me that fucking sandboxes full of fucking sand from the desert in Egypt filled with gold and jewels and like dragons hoard treasure is realistic, but a monkey with a shotgun guarding a gate isn't? Like, fuck off.
Oh my god, that is absolutely fucking hilarious.
People had whole ass anteaters and shit. Like, for God's sakes, one of the presidents had a pair of alligators in the White House pets. Like, you are actually retarded if you think I'm going to believe for even a second that there's not even a single chance that the whole monkey with a shotgun guarding the gate isn't even a little bit true.
Honestly, I just love the mental image of that.
Bro, for real though, like, it's just, I love it because it epitomizes what my island at that time, or that part of my island at the time, exemplified. Just opulence on a level that teetered on being like,
absurd.
Not even absurd, but just like
cartoonish.
Cartoonish, but to the point where it's like, up to that, the only people who were able to achieve that level of opulence on a day-to-day basis for a living style, that is, or a living style, were people who historically were considered living gods. Like pharaohs and emperors and shit, like, so to think that someone of just a normal upbringing just managed to make a few good business decisions and literally make themselves a living emperor.
Yeah.
And now they just have a bunch of mini palaces that are then competing with each other to outdo themselves. That's how they got to that level of opulence.
So it's just like a pissing contest of opulence at this point.
As I put it last time, it was more of an arms race, because one would pop up and they're like, oh, I have more gold than you. It's like, aha, not anymore, you motherfucker. And then it would just be like you said, a pissing match, but it got to the point where, you're talking like literal, like you have guys coming in from all over fucking Europe, artisans and craftsmen and designers and architects, people that worked on the most elaborate and illustrious palaces and cathedrals and etc. across Europe, the Vatican and the fucking I don't even know, just like, I can't emphasize enough how much they were like, nothing is to be cut corners on. Nothing, not even like, you go to these places and the mansions inside, like the little, everything right down to the grout used in the tiles is engraved with like decals and shit. Like, nothing was overlooked.
Honestly, I keep saying this, but I am definitely, when I have the money to, fucking visiting your island, because I want to see this shit in person.
Oh my, there's nothing like it. Like, there's a couple of examples elsewhere in the country from the same period, but nothing on this scale. Like, there are individual houses and buildings and stuff that match the level of opulence,
but you will not find the quantity of such anywhere else.
And not anywhere. Nowhere outside of Europe, that is. Like, and the thing about it is, you have to remember, like, the thing like, even when you visit places, you have to, like, constantly remind yourself, consciously, that because you forget when you go to this, you're just like lost in the opulence. You're like, wow, you're just like, you have to remind yourself, this was a private home, a summer home, meaning they were only here at most, and this is a stretch, 2 to 3 months out of the year. The other 8 to 9 months, it sat vacant.
You gotta, like, think, does that not kind of piss you off just to think about? Like...
Like, and so, not only were they only here for like 2 to 3 months at a time at best, like, that's stretching it, like, on a really good year, because they only came here because it was colder than living down south, where obviously it's unbearable during the summer. So they only liked it here because of the ocean and the weather. Outside of that, so they come here just for that short period of time, leave the whole. Not to mention, it's not even the only one they have. The Vanderbilts, for example, they had, Marble House, they had the Elms, they had the Breakers, and I think Rose Cliffs. That's 4 just by themselves here in Newport. And then they had a couple of houses in New York City itself where they spent most of their time. And then they had a winter home down in North Carolina called the Biltmore House. All of which encompassed and, exemplified the same level of luxury their Newport.
God, thinking about that is just baffling. Like
I said last time, imagine if you controlled the entire transit system of an entire country, like the United States, and every single dollar that was made in profit went straight into your personal bank. That's how the Vanderbilts in particular made their money.
There is a joke that I'm compelled to make, but I will wait till we're not recording.
Oh, Jesus, I can't wait. But anyway, so, now that I've kind of really driven home, I've put enough nails in that coffin. I touched on the Navy during World War II, and that's an interesting topic.
Yes, you were also talking about the hurricane that hit your island.
Oh, that's right, thank you. So it was known as the Hurricane of 30. Now...
The hurricane of what? You kind of cut out?
30. The Hurricane of 38. 1938 is when it struck. September, it was like the first or second week of September of 19. Now, the thing about the Hurricane of 38 is, remember how devastating Katrina was?
Yeah. Like,
it was
fucking Katrina didn't hit anywhere near where I am up in fucking Canada, but seeing it on the news, it was a shit show.
Okay, well, let me put it this way, right? Most of my island at the time, like most port cities and, farming communities of the 1930s, everything was made of wood, for the most part, wood or stone, and any stone that was used was usually accent pieces or, like, brick. And so, it was 1938, everyone was just going about their daily routine. The beaches were completely packed because there used to be a big boardwalk, kind of like Coney Island, down on the one of the main beaches. It's not there anymore, and I'll get to that in a second. Well, most of it's not there. That I'll also get to. So, picture it. It's 1938. Boardwalk, beaches, everything, fish markets, the piers, the whole shebang. It's all packed, as it would be on a normal afternoon. And just, you're going about your day, and then the sky starts, turning black as ink, think like Noah's Ark, it's the end of days almost. And the wind picks up, and and it starts to feel like just a normal heavy rain starts about to roll in. So everyone starts kind of, packing things up and, meandering along. Not too much of a hurry, because to them it's just a rainstorm. The rain's not going to kill them, so they think. What they don't know is that a Category 5 hurricane is quite literally barreling down on top of them, and they have zero idea of the utter devastation that is about to unfold, because in the next 24 hours, the entire island is submerged under 30 feet of water.
Holy
Tidal waves as high as 50 feet just ravage the entire state coastline, all the way up to the inland province, or the inland capital. You know, flooding it too as well, kind of like Houston a couple of years ago. You know, think of like when the levees broke down in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And how like the same thing, but like my entire island just completely submerged. You know, 600 people completely just outright.
Just like fucking wiped away.
Just wiped out of existence in the first 24 hours. And so like it just, like, the thing about it, the reason it was so destructive and so devastating is because obviously they didn't have sonar, they didn't have any weather forecast back then, so they had no idea.
It just like basically fucking came out of nowhere and bit them in the ass.
Literally, because, you know, and I'll get to some of the like first-hand accounts of what happened on the ground as it, you know, as this is all going on. And like, so what ended up happening was much like with Katrina, it was what they would call, you know, a perfect storm, or like a storm of the century. You know, that also happened to have the worst possible, or perfect, depending on how you want to look at it, trajectory. So normally hurricanes that come up the East Coast and hit us, my island, because we get them, they usually come up from the Caribbean, or like off the coast of Florida or the Carolinas. You know, and they usually like bounce off the Carolinas or like the Delaware Valley or like New York City, and then eventually make their way to us, by which point they're very weak. You know, kind of like a vaccine. You get the germ, but it's already, you know, dying essentially.
Yep.
That's basically what we get. We get the hurricane vaccine, essentially. Except this one, this was no vaccine. This completely skipped all of the coastline and made a direct beeline for my island.
So it basically, it had your island in its sights and it was out for blood.
Bro, that bitch was like a fucking homing missile, and it was out for blood, dude. Like, it was, like, because the way hurricanes work is they, you know, once they hit land, you know, every minute that passes, every hour that, you know, it touches land, it gets weaker and weaker. But if it's over open water like that,
it just builds and builds and builds.
By the time it got to us, it was already pushing past category. Like, it was already out of category 5, but depending on, you know, based on what happened, I kind of like pushed that to a 6.
So basically, this was pretty much the wrath of God.
Oh,
at
this
this
was
point.
the wrath of God. Like, probably, like, most people who went through it probably thought it was the apocalypse. You know, because up to that point, nothing like that had ever, you know, on record, at least not to that degree. You know, like I said, we would always get hurt. Like rinky-dink things, like category 1 or 2 at best, maybe a 3 on the really nasty, but never a 5, and never like that. And the way the harbor and shit is set up is that when it came, it completely, like, it just anally raped the stage.
So I'd imagine, like, afterwards,
just straight up the center
would look like fucking the aftermath of a nuclear explosion almost in terms of damage.
The entire, I'll drop some fucking pictures, but so onto a couple of first-hand accounts, because my grandfather actually lived. He was 19, because he was born in 1919. He was. Wait. Yeah, 19. Because this was in 38. He was born. Anyway, he was super young, so he lived through it. He was on the island. Some parts of the island suffered far less than the others. But the boardwalk that I mentioned, everyone on it were just gone out. In fact, the Ferris wheel that was there, actually, the wind, not even the waves, the wind picked it up and
just fucking threw it, basically.
Just fucking Yeeted that bitch right into the reservoir behind, and it's still there to this day.
Wow.
In fact, if you fly low enough, you can actually see the outline of in the silt at the bottom of the reservoir. So all of that shit, like anything that wasn't like cemented into the bedrock was just
fucking gone.
Just gone.
Like basically picked up like a toy and thrown.
Yeah.
Or wiped away by the fucking flood.
Yeah. So, and anything that managed to like survive the initial tsunami, essentially, and that wasn't damaged by, massive deluges of rubble and debris, such as telephone timbers, boats, pier pieces. Like anything that was in the water at the time was now barreling across the island like a rampaging feral pig with the scent of blood on its nose.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Just like completely leveling everything in its path. And it traveled across the island, just completely. Just the island was like a wad of gum on the sidewalk to it. Just completely just stepped right over it and just left a wave of devastation in its wake, and then just battered the rest of the fucking state alongside it. And all of this did a huge, absolutely devastating effect on any of the remaining mansions that were still in place, because this was only less than 10 years after the fucking market crash, and all the families went bye-bye, and all their servants went bye-bye, and all their money went bye-bye. So that's one picture. Here's a railroad track that was completely uprooted and just tossed aside like a Lincoln log set.
Yeah, it literally, apart from the water, looks like a fucking nuclear bomb went off, kind of.
Yeah.
Although I think there would be a lot less houses standing, but holy shit.
Like, let me see if I can pull up some pictures of my island. Yeah, this is where the boardwalk. This is the boardwalk after the hurricane, after the water had receded.
God damn, just the sheer amount of devastation is like...
Yeah, so see, that's the boardwalk. Isn't it nice? Here's another angle of the same boardwalk. Are you showing this on stream, by the way?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. And by the way, there are no bodies in any of the...
Right.
Yeah, see, isn't it a nice boardwalk? You can see where everything used to be.
Mm-hmm. It's like, that is actually, like, to picture that happening is terrifying.
Like, yeah, like, and people survived this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Only about, like, out of the thousands of people that were 600 died.
That's honestly miraculous that more weren't killed.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, like, because most of these people were just going about their daily lives. So their daily lives revolved around the coastline, where literally most of this shit happened. When I said before, like, deluges of timber, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this particular picture.
Oh my fucking god.
If you've ever seen, like, log flumes from, like, the early 1900s and, like, the Canadian, like, frontier days, think that, but now it's coming at you at, like, 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, that is just a wall of annihilation.
And that's what, like, most of the island, like, left with. That and, like, so it would have been, like, big chunks of lumber like that just lying about with, like, entire roofs just resting on top of it like a giant cookie with chocolate chips over it.
So how long did it take the recovery process?
Oh, decades. Well, it was. You see, it's funny you say that because think about it. This happened in 1938.
Mm-hmm.
World War II broke out in 1939.
So yeah, it was just bad times ahead for your island at that point, wasn't it?
Yeah, but thankfully, with the Navy being there, jobs were extremely bountiful.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone.
And I can imagine, like, not only decades of just recovery, but the amount of money, like millions, it probably would have costed to get all this shit cleared away and rebuilt and fucking.
But like, think about all that energy, all that negative energy, all that like think of all the graves and shit that were torn up, all the family, like the sentimental energy that people were exuding during the recovery process. That all of that is permanently stained.
So yeah, basically, when I eventually get around to visiting, you expect some serious paranormal activity.
Possibly. It's not always guaranteed. Sometimes the ghosts are very shy and don't like to come out for new people. Which is completely understandable. But like, let me tell you a couple of eyewitness accounts of the actual events.
Yeah, and then we'll have to wrap this up because this is pushing an hour and 20.
That's perfectly fine. One story that I always... Huh?
Oh, I was saying I would like to go longer, but my internet really does not like me uploading videos longer than an hour and 30, so...
Oh, no worries. But, like, the one story that I always, come back to, because there's many different stories that you can find online and stuff of, documentaries and interviews with people and survivors and done. One that I almost never hear mentioned was, there's this one mansion, I don't know where it was or still standing or anything about it, but I doubt it's still standing because of what happened in the story. So, when the hurricane hit, right, and everyone was realizing that it's oh shit, this isn't just a rainstorm, we need to take shelter and not be outside and shit. So one of the mansions downtown near the coastline unfortunately did not understand the concept of, in a hurricane tornado situation, you always seek lower ground if you're indoors. So go into the basement or a cellar. At all costs, do not go into the upper floors or the attic, because that's usually the parts that get damaged the most.
Yeah, and it's I'm up in Canada, we don't really get hurricanes, but we do get tornadoes time to time, so I'm kind of familiar with having to get into the basement.
Then this will scare you to your core, probably. Because if you've ever experienced a tornado or tornado drill, real or fake.
I have been through one decently bad tornado in my life.
Okay, then this is probably going to give you flashbacks of some kind. Because what ended up happening next was the owners of the house, like I said, no one understood any of this, right? They didn't understand the severity of it. They didn't understand the protocol. So they ordered all of the servants, all the maids and butlers and stuff, upstairs into the servant quarters on the top floor into the attic. So they're all dozens of these people are just huddled upstairs in the attic in the servants' quarters. And they're all huddled together in the darkness and stuff, and the wind is raging out. It sounds like the world is coming to an end. Because it's a Category 5. I've been through Category 3s, and it sounds like, oh my god, the house. Never mind, in an old Victorian mansion on the top floor in a Category 5. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, again, no. Say it's God himself is coming down, and he is fucking pissed.
It's funny you say that, because what ended up happening next was something straight out... imagine if God was a Titan from Attack on Titan. Because what ended up happening next was the roof was ripped off, sucked into the hurricane, and so now the entire servants' quarters is exposed to the open gales of this hurricane, completely unobstructed. And so there's furniture and clothing and bedding and pillows and every manner of thing just getting sucked out of the thing like God just stuck a vacuum into the house, right? And now remember, there's dozens of people up in this room. And unfortunately, not all of them made it out.
God,
because
that would be fucking...
one poor girl, she lost her grip on the bedding, on the railing, grabbed on to the footboard, right? So like the opposite of the headboard. And it was like something out of a cartoon where her she was grabbing onto it, and her leg and the rest of her body was flying through the air, fighting, the winds trying to suck her out. And she eventually lost her grip. It sucked into that.
God, that is just absolutely horrible.
And so she's like, the whole time she's like onto this, like screaming for her life as everyone's like trying to like pull her down and help her, or trying to approach her without themselves getting sucked out, and she just ends up getting sucked out of the house. Like God himself just plucked her right out of the house like a titan.
Yeah, that is absolutely, like, just picturing that is, I know I've been saying this a lot, but picturing that is fucking terrifying.
Dude,
Like,
that's what I'm talking about.
Imagine what was going through her mind at the time.
Bro, and that's the worst part about dying in a hurricane or something like that, because they've done research into it, and they say it's not even like, you would think that something like it being hard to breathe with all the wind and stuff, acting on your body, either sucking the air out or like causing so much pressure it's hard to move your chest and shit. And that is true, but they say theoretically that the most likely cause of death in a hurricane like that is blunt force trauma from flying debris.
Yeah, because
being hit, or worse yet, being flung out of the hurricane at Mach speed like a fucking Dragon Ball Z battle, and being hurled into the ground.
It's not a pretty way to go, no matter which way you slice it.
Not even. Because let's say you do die in the hurricane, to go somewhere. Eventually, that somewhere usually ends in the form of you being flung across the countryside 160 something miles.
And like, I've seen like footage from like tornadoes where like fucking 2x4s from buildings are ripping right through, like taking fucking trees out sometimes.
Now imagine what would happen if a person was in place of that 2x4. What would happen if, a person
it's going straight fucking through them like a goddamn missile.
That's what I'm saying. Like, imagine a body flying through the air at 150 miles into a brick wall.
Yeah, there's not going to be much left of you but a stain after that.
Yeah, literally, though.
And on that rather grim and disturbing note, I think we're going to leave this video off.
Didn't I say last time it was going to get way fucking...
Oh, yes, you did.
Killing each other? Like... And I didn't even get to America's Cup, but that's just a stupid yachting race that no one gives a fuck about.
So, we may make a third part on this, or we may move on to another topic.
Probably another topic. If something comes up that relates to anything I didn't cover, I'll just bring it up at that point. But there's really not a whole lot else to cover that I haven't really...
I think we've covered the main, like, the most interesting parts of your island's history, so...
100%.
So, again, thank you for being on and telling these stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to do it again. Hopefully, we'll find something interesting to talk about next time that doesn't send me on a 4-hour political rant in Northern Ireland.
I've got a few ideas in my back pocket, so we'll discuss that at a later date. Anyway, thank you all for watching.